This next exercise follows on from the previous example we've used, and I've just put some other extra ideas in here. So I'm still using the same basic track, but we're going to do some extra, introduce some more features of logic with this. Just to remind ourselves what we did, and again have a listen to the new sections I've added. So you can see, indeed, here I've added just a synth, an improvised synth line. So I've got the same piano riff, a slightly different bass riff, and a drum track. What we're going to do two things with this. We're actually going to introduce another feature using some audio tracks in Logic, but also consider how we're going to mix this as well now, so we can get a better balance between the respective instruments. So our first step is actually going to create a new track again. Use the plus new tracks, but instead of selecting a software instrument like we did in the previous exercise, we're going to select audio. Click on create. Logic, like most these type of sequencing programs now, works with MIDI data, which we've just got here, and it also allows you to usually record your own samples, record your own tracks, or actually include its own library of samples and sounds, etc. So to view these, what we're going to use, we're going to improve the drum track here because it's a little it needs some work doing on the drum track at the moment to make it a bit more interesting. I'm going to hide the library again by clicking on that, and we're actually going to go to View and Show Apple Loops, and Logic will come loaded with a lot of extra files. The blue ones are all audio files. If you ever see a green one, let me just see if we can find some more in here. Let's just go into electronic, for example. I'll click on the reset button there, and you can see some of these are green. This signifies this is MIDI tracks. So this is audio tracks, these are MIDI tracks. And we're going to add a Cuban percussion track into this, so it's stylistically it would fit with this track. So we can use a search function. It may just go to all drums first of all, actually. Go to all drums and then type in Cuban. And you can see what it's found is Cuban Sun percussion, all these variations here. And if I click on this, you can audition it. Down the right hand side you've got the tempo. This is not a fixed tempo, this will fit to adjust the tempo of the track you're working with. This is the beauty of Apple Loops. So these are not standard audio files. They are audio files with built-in tempo markers in which will adapt to the tempo of your transport bar up here. So I'm just going to click and drag into that new audio track that we've created before, and you can see that goes in there. I can hide Apple Loops. Generally there are keystrokes for these sort of things, so you can actually see what I'm doing very often. I'm going to use the menu functions rather than using the keystrokes. Some I can't remember myself as well, so I've now hidden that. That obviously is just taking up 2 bars. So Logic has this function or this feature where you can loop the same track. If you put the cursor there, you extend the track, or not in this case. If you put it on the top half of the screen, you can see it changing to a loop icon. Just click and drag, and that fills the whole track with as many of those loops, with many varieties you want. So if I press play now, certainly made the drum track more interesting and more suitable for this. If I just mute that out temporarily, you can actually hear the difference. It's worth looking at perhaps some of the other tools that are available in Logic for this now, just so we can start to develop a musical arrangement with this. So using this icon here, and I'm going to use the mute tool there. Click on the mute tool, and if I was just to click on maybe the first piano riff section, that will only now mute out that area of the screen. So that's separate from that mute button there, just to clarify that. If I click on mute there, that mutes the whole track out, you won't hear it. If I decide to develop the arrangement just by introducing the piano there, you will hear the effect of that, you can probably guess. So we're starting to make what is a 4 or 8 bar riff now start to be more interesting. We're actually starting to develop as a musical arrangement just using some of these tools. This is a temporary measure. You can reintroduce that back if you wish, or you decide you want to delete that section permanently. You can go back to the toolbox and use the eraser tool there. I'm just clicking on these. So these are all standard editing tools which you'll find in most software and in this type of software. Let's have a look at the mixing now, because as I said before, we need to think about the balance of the track we've got now. Click on the mixer icon, or indeed in the old version of Logic, in Logic 9, you could use your X. Let's do the same thing. Yes, I've just pressed X on the MIDI key on the computer keyboard there, so that gives you access to the mixer. And as you'd expect, you've got a fairly standard mixer layout here. These are your pan settings, these are your levels, these are your volumes. More about these later on. This is various effects that have come preloaded with this. So if you've selected the piano, if you've selected the bass, this particular muted bass, it already loads these sort of effects with you. So I, for example, this is just, you can get other options there, but I'll stay away from that for the moment. Experiment in your own time by all means, but for the purpose of this video I'll stay away from it. I'll just reset that back to flanger, which is probably under modulation. There we go. So you can turn these on and off just by these. So I think this is one thing we can do with this is solo out the tracks. So we can listen to the tracks individually there. So when you're mixing, it's a good idea just to listen to the tracks. Pull the bass up a bit. Here and see I'm making some basic adjustments to the. So just to recap what we've done in this exercise, we've started with a variation of our example number 1 track we used. I've developed that a little by adding an extra synthesizer there. I've changed the bass line. In this video we've used the mute tool to mute out a section of the track, and then eventually we decided that we didn't want that in, and also I've used the eraser tool to remove it completely from the track. Back to the pointer tool. We've used an audio track which is accessed using this area of the screen here, and we also used view show Apple loops to gain access to the percussion tracks. In this case I've used here. Don't forget the search function if you're looking for something. We can hide that as well. And the other feature I introduced was the loop tool here, which allows you to do that. So just one more thing, I guess, before we do this, before we leave this, I'll leave you to work on your own ideas. If I go back to view and show Apple loops again, I could use, at this point in the track, I could use another of these percussion ideas dragged into there, and again we'd loop that. So from terms of musical development now, as the piano track comes in, I've introduced a new percussion track there. The other feature we looked at was a mixing desk, using X on the keyboard or just access it through there. And we adjusted some levels and pan settings with this. And I'll just play this back to see what this addition of this new Cuban track has come. If I just solo that out, we can actually hear that in isolation. There's a nice subtle variation now. If you bring the whole track back in again,